All right, let me ask you something a little out there. What if the kindest, most compassionate thing you could do for someone who's hurting is to actually not soothe their pain? I know, it sounds totally wrong, right? But today, we're diving into a really powerful perspective, inspired by the teachings of Acharya Prashant, that's going to make us question everything we think we know about kindness.
I mean, you've seen this one everywhere, haven't you? It's all over social media, maybe even on a coffee mug or a bumper sticker. The greatest religion is not to hurt others. And, it sounds so good. It feels noble. It's easy to like, it's easy to share. It's pretty much become the golden rule of what you might call Instagram spirituality. But hang on a second. Here's the twist. What if this beautiful, well-meaning idea is actually a mistake? What if it's based on a really deep misunderstanding of what hurt even is? And what if all our efforts to never hurt anyone are accidentally causing a much deeper, more subtle kind of harm?
Okay, so let's start with the person who's always getting hurt. You know who I'm talking about. According to this teaching, someone who gets wounded so easily isn't just a victim of what other people are doing. No, their sensitivity, that constant fragility, is actually a symptom of something that's already going on inside. They're carrying a wound long before anyone else comes along and pokes it.
But this is where the teaching gets, well, really controversial. Because while that fragile person might be a problem to themselves, the argument is that there's someone even worse, someone who does even more damage. And who is that? It's the person who rushes in to pamper them, the one who mollycoddles the wound.
And look, this isn't just about one-on-one relationships. We've kind of built our whole culture around this. Think about it. We've created an environment where showing off how hurt you are gets you attention. It gets you sympathy. It gets you care. So instead of helping people find their own strength, we end up rewarding the very fragility we claim we want to heal.
So let's break down how this actually works, because it's a vicious cycle. On the one hand, what do? We rush in to soothe every little complaint. We patronize the wound. We basically reward fragility. And we think we're being so helpful, right? But what's the real result? We're actually strengthening their ego. We're encouraging them to depend on us. And worst of all, we're preventing them from doing the real work of growing and becoming free.
And this really gets to the heart of it. We confuse indulgence with love. See, what we often call love or compassion is really just indulgence. It's the easy way out. It feels good for us, the person doing the helping, but it does absolutely nothing for the other person's real long-term freedom.
So, let's bring this home for a second. Think about your own life, your own relationships. Be honest. Isn't it true that we often give way more of our time and energy to that one friend or family member who's the most, fragile? The one who gets hurt the most easily? We end up walking on eggshells around them, constantly trying to manage their feelings.
And look, of course we do this with the best of intentions. We're not trying to cause harm. We do it because we care about these people. We genuinely believe that by rushing in with all that sympathy and all those soothing words, we're helping them. We really think we're being loving.
But this is exactly where Acharya Prashant's teaching pushes us to go deeper, to look past our good intentions and really get to the root of the problem. And to do that, we have to ask a much more fundamental question. What is this thing we call hurt anyway?
And this right here, this is the million-dollar question. Is there anything at all that can be hurt besides the ego? Think about it. According to this teaching, what really gets hurt isn't you, not the real, deep core you. What gets hurt is the ego. It's that story you tell yourself, the collection of ideas and beliefs like, I'm a good person, or I'm someone who should be respected. When that story gets challenged, that's what feels the sting. The story gets hurt, not the real you.
So if we accept that hurt is really just the ego getting bruised, then think about what happens when we sympathize with every little injury. Every time we rush in and say, oh, you poor thing, you're right to be upset, what are we really doing? We're telling them, yes, that fragile story you tell about yourself, that's really you, and it's right to be hurt. We're basically helping them build a stronger prison for themselves, strengthening their bondage to that false self. Now this is a complete game changer. Suddenly, hurt isn't this terrible thing we have to avoid at all costs. Instead, as Acharya Prashant says, it becomes an opportunity. It's like a diagnostic tool. That feeling of pain, it's a big, bright, flashing neon sign pointing directly at the spot where you're still dependent on something outside of yourself, where you're still caught up in some kind of illusion.
So, okay, how do we actually use this opportunity? It's not about ignoring the pain, not at all. It's more like a four-step investigation. First, you have to acknowledge the hurt. Don't pretend it's not there. Second, you ask that huge question. Who inside me is actually hurt? Is it the real me, or is it my story about me? Third, you get curious and identify the hidden expectation that just got stepped on. And finally, once you see that clearly, you can start to move away from it towards real freedom.
So that brings us to the final, really practical question for all of us. Think about it. Whether it's a wound inside yourself that you're always feeding with self-pity, or a wound in someone you love that you're always rushing to soothe, which wound are you going to stop pampering today? Which one will you finally let heal in the name of real love and real freedom?